The Scath warship was a silhouette of nightmares. Its hull was carved into jagged, predatory lines, like the skull of some deep-ocean beast. Rows of weapon blisters jutted along its flanks, and its forward prow bristled with spines that glowed, faintly red. The kind of glow that meant charged. Rafe's stomach knotted. The Cinderhawk was a salvage tug, unarmed, unarmored, and about as threatening as a tin can in a hurricane. Against that warship, he might as well paint a bullseye. On his hull and open every airlock. The proximity klaxon screamed again. He killed it with a jab of his finger, the sudden silence somehow worse. In the med bay, the alien still lay strapped to the cot, eyes closed. For a moment, Rafe thought it was unconscious. Then, without warning, the molten gold eyes opened, and focused not on him, but on the shifting silhouette outside the viewport. "They're here," the alien said. Not a question, not a guess. Just fact. "Your people?" Rafe asked, though he already knew the answer. Vakor, that was the name it had given when he'd asked back in the med bay, didn't look away from the viewport. "Not my people. My executioners." Rafe snorted. "Friendly lot you run with." The alien's head turned slowly toward him, and the look in those eyes made his skin crawl. "They cannot know I live. If they do, they burn the truth." "And what truth would that be?" Rafe asked. Vakor didn't answer. Instead, it shifted. And for the first time since he'd pulled it aboard, it moved like it wasn't injured at all. The restraints clicked open with a sound Rafe didn't remember making. In 3 steps, Vakor was in the cockpit, standing over him. Even with the low ceiling, it seemed taller here, its shadow spilling across the controls. Rafe's hand hovered, near the pistol on his thigh. "You're supposed to be hurt," Rafe said, his voice flat. "I am hurt," Vakor replied. "I am also Scath. That is not the same as being weak." Outside, the warship drifted closer, its bulk blotting out the stars. Rafe's sensors told him it had already locked weapons, but it hadn't fired. Not yet. This wasn't a rush to kill. This was the patience of a predator closing in on cornered prey. Then the comm crackled. A voice poured through, deep, resonant, and layered with static. "Human vessel, you carry something that belongs to the Dominion. Surrender it, and your death will be swift. Resist, and you will learn how slow we can make the void." The words left a cold weight in Rafe's gut. He cut the channel, turning to Vakor. "What exactly are they willing to burn a ship down for?" The alien's gaze hardened. "Me." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll live long enough to get." The comm lit up again. This time, no words, just a low, rumbling tone that seemed to vibrate in Rafe's teeth. The Scath warship was waiting, testing, seeing what the human would do. Vakor leaned forward, one claw tapping the console's edge. "They don't believe you will give me to them. They also don't believe you will fight. They are correct on one of those things. You must choose which." Rafe glanced at the sensor readouts. Boarding craft were warming up in the warship's bays. Not launched yet, but seconds away. "You're asking me to pick between giving you up to be spaced or going up against a battleship in a tugboat," Rafe said. "Not much of a choice." "There is a third option," Vakor said. "Oh, you die, and I take your ship." Rafe gave a humorless chuckle. "Thanks for putting that on the table." The alien didn't smile. It just stared, unblinking, as if measuring him. Outside, one of the warship's running lights swept over the cinder, Hawk flooding the cockpit with harsh white. For an instant, Vakor's shadow stretched across the entire ceiling, jagged, alien, and unmistakably lethal. The proximity alarm screamed again. This time, Rafe didn't silence it. He just met the alien's molten gaze and said, "If I'm picking between them and you, I'll take my chances with the devil I know." The alien tilted its head. as if weighing the meaning. Then it gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. On the sensors, the first boarding craft detached from the Scath warship. Space was never truly silent. Not for those who listened. Inside the cramped cockpit of the Cinder Hawk, Rafe Kellen could hear the whispers, faint groans of stressed hull plating, the low hum of the reactor somewhere behind him, the occasional tick, tick, tick of cooling metal. Out here, in the graveyard between the Wyseth Nebula and the broken moons of Caris IV, sound was memory. Everything else was darkness and wreckage. It was supposed to be an easy run. Slip into the wreck field, pull anything valuable from the old battle debris, and burn hard for safer lanes before patrol drones got curious. Rafe had done this dance 100 times before. But tonight, if you could call this endless starlit void night, the sensors had found something that didn't belong, a distress beacon, pulsing on a frequency he'd only ever heard about in barroom war stories. He sat forward, narrowing his eyes at the soft green icon flashing on the console. The signal was faint, almost swallowed by background static, but steady, too steady. Automated beacons from human ships degraded after a few days. This one pulsed with the cold precision of a machine that refused to die. Rafe hesitated. There were rules about things like this, old spacer rules, older than the treaties between worlds. You find a signal you don't understand, you walk away. He didn't. The beacon led him to a shape half hidden in drifting fog from the nebula. At first it looked like another hulk, a shadow in the starfield, lifeless and cold. But as the Cinder Hawk drew closer, the details emerged, and Rafe's gut went cold. The warship wasn't human. Its hull was all wrong, black plating scarred, with patterns like claw marks, edges too sharp to be accidental. Sections of the vessel had been sheared away entirely, leaving jagged ribs of alien alloy jutting into space. Some of the exposed metal glimmered faintly, as if catching light from a sun that wasn't there. Rafe killed the thrusters, letting the salvage tug drift closer. The warship's docking bay yawned open, jagged from some ancient impact. Inside, shadows shifted, not from movement, but from the slow spin of debris, torn panels, shattered weapons, something that looked uncomfortably like a bone. The beacon's tone grew louder in his headset. Ping, ping, ping. Perfect intervals. Unnatural. Patience. Hell with it, Rafe muttered, locking in the docking clamps. The Cinder Hawk shuddered as its hull met alien steel. The airlock door fought him, hydraulics whining before giving way with a clank that echoed down the connection tube. Beyond was darkness, broken only by flickers of failing lights deeper. Inside, his helmet display registered atmosphere on the other side, but not human breathable. He locked the seal, the hiss of pressurization loud in his ears. The first step into the warship felt like stepping into someone else's nightmare. The corridor stretched ahead, tall enough for something much larger than a human. Burn marks scarred the walls. Not neat laser scoring, but savage splashes of molten metal frozen in mid-drip. Strange symbols, maybe a language, were etched into the plating, half melted from the same violence that gutted the ship. And then he saw it. On the deck, a smear of liquid caught his helmet light. Not red, not even close. It was a deep, metallic blue that shimmered faintly, as though tiny stars swam beneath the surface. The smear trailed along the corridor, vanishing into shadow. Rafe's pulse kicked up. He knew enough about alien biology to know that whatever bled like that probably wasn't dead. He followed anyway. The ship groaned around him, a slow metal sigh as if resenting his presence. Every so often he thought he heard something just beyond the edge of his audio sensors. Not machinery, but breathing. Heavy, slow, intentional. The smear led him to a blast door stuck halfway open. He crouched, sliding under, the edge of the door scraping against the back of his suit. Beyond lay a chamber that had once been a med bay. Now it was a charnel house. Slabs were overturned, shattered glass crunched underfoot, and the air was heavy with the copper tang of alien blood. The walls bore deep gouges, as if claws had raked them in fury or desperation. One overturned table twitched. Rafe froze, hand going to the pistol at his thigh. A shadow moved under the table, and then it emerged, tall, armored, breathing raggedly through a shattered helmet. Skin like molten bronze streaked with that same star-speckled blue blood. And eyes that glowed like banked coals, locking on him with a predator's focus. It tried to stand, failed, and collapsed against the wall. Then, in a voice as rough as grinding stone, it spoke. "Help. Me. Human." The pause stretched, and the next words came with a hiss that coiled down his spine. "And I will let you die quickly." For a second, Rafe just stared, not at the alien's size, though even slumped against the wall it was a head taller than him, but at the way its eyes didn't waver. Wounded, helmet shattered, blood pouring, and still it studied him, like a butcher sizing up a cut of meat. The heat from his suit's systems felt suffocating in the med bay's cold. His breath fogged the inside of his visor. He tightened his grip on the pistol, but the alien didn't flinch. Its breathing came slow, deliberate, as if every inhale was measured to keep it conscious just long enough to say what it wanted to say. "Help me," it rasped again, voice scraping like metal dragged over stone. Then, in that same slow hiss, "And I will let you die quickly." Rafe's thumb brushed the pistol's safety. He could leave. He should leave. This was a Scath, one of the Dominion's warriors, if the armor design was anything to go by. Their fleets had glassed human colonies during the first expansion wars. Kids grew up playing with toy soldiers modeled after the heroes who'd fought and died against them. The Scath were the monster at the end of humanity's bedtime story, but here one was, beaten, bleeding, and still dangerous enough to threaten him while barely able to stand. "Yeah," Rafe muttered. "You're real inspiring." The alien's head tilted, a faint glimmer in those molten gold eyes. Not understanding. The words, maybe, but the tone. Tone was universal. He knelt, keeping the pistol up, and scanned the alien's injuries. Armor plates had been caved in along the ribs, exposing flesh that shimmered wetly. Shrapnel jutted from its side. Its left leg was bent wrong, the joint swollen and dark with pooling blood. It shouldn't have been able to walk, yet somehow, Rafe knew that if it decided to lunge, he wouldn't get 2 shots off before it reached him. The beacon in his comm still pulsed. Ping. 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 The sound felt louder now, as if the ship itself was watching. He holstered the pistol, slowly, letting the alien see the motion, and dug a collapsible stretcher from his pack. "This is your lucky day," he muttered. The alien's gaze followed every move, its claws twitching faintly. When Rafe slid his hands under its arms, he felt the heat of its blood through his gloves. Too hot, almost feverish. It weighed more than he expected, dense with muscle and armor, but he managed to haul it onto the stretcher. The moment he straightened, something cold clamped around his wrist. Rafe froze. The alien's grip wasn't just strong, it was unforgiving, the kind of strength that could shatter bone without effort. Even weakened, its claws dug into the armored weave of his suit. The coals of its eyes burned hotter as it leaned just close enough for its voice to slide under his skin. "When I can stand," it said, each word deliberate, "I decide your fate." It let go. Just like that. Rafe's pulse thundered in his ears as he dragged the stretcher toward the corridor. The medbay lights flickered again, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw movement in the shadows above. Something skittering away, into the ceiling ducts. The ship groaned, a sound that made him feel less like he was inside a dead vessel and more like he was moving through the carcass of something that had once lived. Back at the airlock, the Cinderhawk loomed like a lifeboat in a storm. He got the stretcher through, sealed the hatch, and cycled the lock. Inside his own ship, the air tasted like home, recycled and stale, but human. He lowered the alien onto his medbay cot, the restraints clicking automatically into place. The alien's breathing slowed, its eyes closed, or maybe just narrowed, but the muscles in its jaw never relaxed. Rafe sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the still form in the medbay through the internal cameras. His finger hovered over the comms panel. He could call in a patrol ship. Let them deal with it. The thought barely had time to settle before the console blared a proximity alarm. Something was approaching from the darkness. Through the forward viewport, a shadow slid into view, vast, sharp, and unmistakable. A warship. The kind of warship whose silhouette every human spacer knew by heart. A Scath Dominion vessel, hunting, and the only thing on his ship worth hunting was lying in his medbay. The Scath boarding craft didn't rush. They drifted in a slow, deliberate arc, their knife-shaped hulls gleaming in the starlight. It was the same way a predator circles a wounded animal. No need to hurry when the prey has nowhere to go. Rafe watched them approach on the tactical display. Each one was big enough to swallow the Cinderhawk whole, but they didn't need to. They only needed to attach, breach, and flood his ship with soldiers. "They're playing with us," Rafe muttered. Vakor didn't take his eyes off the viewport. "That's their way. Fear before the kill. It softens the will to fight." "Noted," Rafe said, hands moving over the controls. He flicked off the Cinderhawk's external lights, plunging them into shadow. The only illumination came from the console screens and the warship's sweeping search beams. One of those beams slid across the tug's hull, blindingly bright. The cockpit filled with white, and for a moment, Vakor's shadow stretched impossibly, long across the walls, jagged alien, more beast than soldier. The comm crackled again, the Scath captain's voice like oil poured over gravel. "Human, you have no stake in this. Surrender the traitor, and we will spare you. Defy us, and you will die knowing your choice was meaningless." Rafe's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. The alien's claws tapped against the metal railing behind him. Slow, rhythmic, like the ticking of a clock counting down. "They will breach soon," Vakor said, "and once they are inside, they will not negotiate. They will not threaten. They will simply cut." "That's supposed to scare me?" Rafe asked. "No," Vakor said without inflection. "It is supposed to prepare you." On the display, the lead boarding craft detached from the formation and angled toward them. Its hull was lined with rotating breaching augers, steel drills meant to chew through bulkheads in seconds. A shiver ran through Rafe's spine at the thought of that sound inside his ship. The boarding craft fired a short burst of thrusters, closing the final gap, and then it stopped. Just stopped. The sudden stillness was worse than the approach. It hung there, nose inches from the Cinderhawk's hull, its running lights cutting across the tug's scarred plating. The search beam swept the cockpit again, washing everything in sterile white. Vakor shifted, his molten gaze never leaving. The viewport. "They are confirming you have me aboard. Once they are certain, they will tear this ship apart." "And what happens if they find out you're not here?" Rafe asked. Vakor's lip curled, exposing sharp, metallic-looking teeth. "They will kill you anyway, for hiding me." "Great," Rafe said dryly. "So no matter what I do, I'm dead." The alien tilted its head. "Yes, but how you die, that is still in your hands." The comm hissed again, this time with a different voice, higher-pitched, sharper. "We smell him, human. He bleeds, his blood sings. You cannot hide prey from the hunters." Something in that voice chilled Rafe worse than the captain's. Outside, the other boarding craft shifted into position, fanning out to box the Cinderhawk in from every angle. They moved like wolves closing in around a fire. The warship loomed behind them, silent and watchful. A dull clang echoed through the tug's hull, a sound Rafe recognized instantly. Magnetic clamps. "They're on us," he said. Vakor's head turned slightly, his voice calm in a way that made Rafe's skin crawl. "Now we will see how you fight." The sound came next, a deep grinding roar as the breaching auger bit into the outer hull. The vibration shuddered through the deck plates, rattling the controls. It was the sound of inevitability, of the line between out there and in here disappearing. Rafe unbuckled from the pilot's chair, every muscle tensed. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't armed for this. And yet, when he glanced at Vakor, the alien's eyes burned with something fierce. Not desperation, but anticipation. The ship groaned as the drill chewed deeper. "You're enjoying this," Rafe said. "This is where the truth lives," Vakor replied. "In the dark, in the blood." The breaching drill stopped. Silence. Then, with a sound like the world tearing open, the inner bulkhead gave way. Black armored figures poured through, weapons raised, their visors reflecting the pale light. The first scath through the breach moved like liquid steel, low, fast, silent. Its rifle came up, the muzzle glowing faintly blue. Rafe ducked behind the bulkhead as the shot hissed past his head, leaving a streak of sizzling metal where it hit. The corridor became chaos in an instant. Two more scath poured in, their black armor swallowing the light, their visors blank mirrors. The air filled with the thud of boots on steel, the hiss of alien comms, and the sharp tang of ionized air from their weapons. Rafe fired back with his sidearm, short, controlled bursts, but against their armor it was like throwing pebbles at a tank. His shots forced them to duck, buying seconds, but not winning anything. Then Vakor moved. One moment, the alien was still in the cockpit shadows. The next, it was in the corridor, a blur of dark armor and burning eyes. A plasma blade, ignited in its grip with a hungry roar, the white-blue arc casting jagged shadows on the walls. The first scath lunged. Vakor sidestepped, the blade carving a molten line through the attacker's chest plate. Black blood sprayed, splattering the walls in glistening arcs. The second soldier tried to backpedal. Too late. Vakor's other hand, tipped with claws, punched through the visor, dragging the body forward like a shield against incoming fire. Rafe didn't waste the distraction. He sprinted to the weapons locker and yanked it open. His fingers closed around something heavy, alien in shape, a captured scath sidearm from a long-ago raid. It felt almost alive, the grip warm, pulsing faintly. "Human," Vakor barked without looking back. "Take it." Rafe hesitated, for half a heartbeat, then grabbed it and slammed the power cell home. The weapon hummed in his hands, its sights adjusting to his vision without him touching a thing. The corridor filled with fire. Rafe's first shot tore through a scath trooper's pauldron, spinning them into the wall. The second shot went center mass, and the armor split, like glass. He didn't stop to think. The boarding craft still clung to the Cinderhawk's side, its open maw spilling more soldiers into the fight. Vakor waded into them like a storm given form, each strike of the plasma blade leaving the stink of scorched metal and flesh. "Why the hell are they after you?" Rafe shouted over the chaos, blasting another trooper off their feet. Vakor's reply was a low growl, timed between strikes. "Because I know what they fear." The way it said it, calm, certain, made Rafe's skin prickle more than the enemy fire. The scath captain's voice crackled over the comm, sharper now, almost frantic. "Traitor! You will not leave this ship! Human! Your life for his head!" Rafe didn't answer. The tug shuddered as the warship outside adjusted. position, trying to keep the boarding craft locked in place while lining up a killing shot. They didn't care if their own soldiers died. The fight in the corridor became a blur of muzzle flashes, blade arcs, and the metallic stench of spilled blood, black and red mixing in slick pools underfoot. When the last of the boarders hit the deck, Rafe was breathing hard, chest heaving, the alien weapon still warm in his hands. Vakor stood over the bodies, the plasma blade dripping molten residue onto the deck. Slowly, the alien deactivated it, the light collapsing with a hiss. "You fight well," Vakor said, voice flat but eyes sharp. "Better than most of your kind." Rafe wiped a sleeve across his face, smearing sweat and grime. "You're welcome." Vakor didn't thank him. Instead, it turned toward the cockpit, claws tapping against the deck like a metronome. "They will come again, stronger. The captain will not allow me to live, and now he will not allow you to live either." Rafe followed, gripping the alien weapon tighter. "So, what's your plan?" Vakor looked over its shoulder, those molten eyes locking on his. "We fight together, or we die apart." Rafe let out a dry laugh. "That's your sales pitch?" The alien's head tilted, as if considering something. Then, almost casually, it tossed him a second weapon, smaller, sleeker, but just as alien. "Next time," Vakor said, "you'll need both hands." The sensors lit up red. The warship was charging its main gun. The Cinderhawk shook like a kicked can as the Scath warship's main gun began charging, a low, gut-deep vibration that made the bulkheads hum. The lights flickered and the smell of ozone filled the air. Rafe gripped the alien's sidearm so hard his knuckles whitened. "That sound isn't friendly, is it?" Vakor didn't answer. It was at the console, claws moving over the controls in a blur. Strange glyphs scrolled across the cracked display, each one pulsing red. "Talk to me," Rafe pressed. Vakor finally glanced up, voice low. "That is the sound of a gun that will tear through this ship, and the vacuum behind it will strip the meat from your bones." The deck lurched as something massive clamped onto the tug's hull. Not another boarding craft. Bigger, heavier. A docking arm from the Scath warship itself. The corridor groaned in protest. "More boarders?" Rafe asked. Vakor's molten eyes narrowed. "Not boarders, hunters." The bulkhead to their left screamed as it was peeled open like a tin lid. Through the jagged hole stepped 3 figures taller than Vakor, wrapped in segmented armor that hissed as it flexed. Each carried a weapon that looked like a cross. Between a spear and a rifle, its barrel glowing with unstable energy. The first hunter stepped fully into the corridor and aimed. Rafe fired first. His alien sidearm spat a bolt of blue-white energy that tore through the hunter's pauldron, but the giant barely staggered. The second hunter moved faster, impossibly fast for its size, lunging with its spear gun. The tip slammed in two, the bulkhead inches from Rafe's head, leaving a smoking crater. Vakor was already there, plasma blade roaring to life, cutting a wide arc that scorched the corridor walls. The weapon bit deep into the second hunter's midsection. But instead of falling, the giant locked its armored hands around Vakor's forearm, holding the blade in place. Rafe saw the third hunter pivot toward him. He didn't think. He dove sideways, firing blindly as the spear gun went off. The shot hit the wall behind him, vaporizing a section of plating and venting a thin stream of atmosphere. The high-pitched hiss filled the corridor like a scream. Vakor snarled, twisted, and tore its arm free, the plasma blade ripping through armor and flesh. Black ichor sprayed in a pressurized mist, but the first hunter, the one Rafe had wounded, charged forward. Its massive hand closed around Rafe's chest, pinning him against the wall hard enough to make his vision spark. The alien weapon slipped from his grip and clattered to the deck. The hunter raised its spear gun for the killing blow, and Vakor's blade punched through its throat from behind. The giant spasmed, its grip loosening just enough for Rafe to drop. He hit the deck, sucking air through gritted teeth, vision swimming. Vakor yanked the blade free and let the hunter's body drop like a slab of meat. "Stay on your feet, human," it growled. "We're not done." Rafe grabbed the fallen alien weapon and stumbled after Vakor toward the cockpit. The corridor was littered with the bodies of Scath soldiers and hunters alike, their blood pooling and drifting in weightless beads as the ship's gravity flickered. The console blared an urgent tone. The main gun was seconds from firing. Vakor stabbed at the controls, opening a comm channel to the Scath warship. Its voice dropped into a guttural snarl. "Captain Varek, fire on me and you will never know what I took from you." There was a pause, then a voice, cold and metallic. "You think I care? The only thing I want from you is silence." The charging sound intensified, rattling Rafe's teeth. Vakor turned to him. "We can't outrun it. We can only make it miss." Rafe swallowed. "How?" Vakor's answer was a grim smile. "By giving them something bigger to worry about." The alien tapped a final command, and deep within the tug's cargo hold, something began to wake. The deck vibrated with a different hum now, deeper, older, and far more dangerous. Rafe's stomach turned. "What did you just turn on?" Vakor's eyes glowed like molten metal. "The weapon they fear most, and it's been sleeping in your ship." Outside, the Scath warship's gun roared to life. The hum rose into a bone-deep thrum that made Rafe's ribs ache. It wasn't the Scath warship's main gun. That was still whining toward a murderous crescendo. No, this was coming from below their feet, from the bowels of the Cinder Hawk. "Smell like burnt copper and hot stone drifted through the vents." "Vakor," Rafe said, voice tight. "What's in my ship?" The Vakari didn't look away from the console. "Not yours. Never yours. This ship was built around it. Your people just didn't know." A tremor rippled through the hull. The Cinder Hawk's gravity cut out entirely, and they both floated for half a heartbeat before slamming back down as it surged back online. Rafe braced himself against the bulkhead. "I'm gonna need more than cryptic riddles before we both get vaporized." Vakor's molten eyes flicked toward him. "In your human tongue, it is a war core, the heart of a planetary siege engine." Rafe's gut went cold. What?" Before Vakor could answer, the Scath warship fired. The universe became light. A beam of green-white energy, wide as a city street, lanced across the void toward them. Rafe's instincts screamed to dive for cover, as if hiding behind a chair would save him. It didn't hit. The war core woke fully. From the Cinderhawk's cargo bay, an expanding shell of shimmering distortion erupted outward. The Scath. Beam hit it and bent. Not deflected entirely, but warped like light through water, grazing the tug's hull instead of piercing it. Even so, the impact rattled every bolt in the ship. Rafe gasped. "That thing just shoved a superweapon sideways." Vakor bared sharp teeth. "For now, but the war core cannot defend us twice without feeding." "Feeding!" The Vakari's claws danced over the controls. "It burns life as fuel. Yours, mine, theirs. It does not care." Rafe stared at him. "You woke something that kills people to keep itself alive?" "It does more than kill. It unravels," Vakor said darkly. "And the Scath would rather be burned to atoms than see it aimed their way again." The comm crackled alive. The same cold voice as before. "Captain Varek, deactivate it, Vakor, or I will put a hole through both of you big enough to see the other side of the stars." Vakor leaned forward, speaking into the channel. "You don't have the nerve." The Scath captain laughed, low and humorless. "I'm Scath. We don't Have nerves. Only orders. On the display, the warship's gun began cycling for another shot. Rafe's pulse slammed in his ears. We can't take another one, can we? No, Vakor admitted. But they can't take what the War Corps is about to do either. He stabbed a control, and deep below, machinery screamed like metal being torn apart. The Cinderhawk's hull began to glow along its seams, each line of plating burning with a faint red light. Rafe could feel it, not just through the deck, but in his teeth, in the pressure behind his eyes. It was like something massive and ancient had uncoiled, stretching after a long sleep. The War Corps wasn't just a machine. It was alive, and it noticed him. He staggered back, a flash of alien images burning through his mind, cities collapsing in silence, oceans boiling away, stars dimming. 1,000 worlds dying in perfect, orderly sequence. Then it spoke, not aloud, not in words, but directly into his thoughts. Feed me. Rafe's knees buckled. Vakor, it's in my head. The Vakari didn't look away from the controls. Ignore it. It speaks to everyone, and to those who listen, it lies. The deck shuddered. Outside, the Scath warship's energy build reached its final pitch. Ready? Vakor asked. No, Rafe said honestly. Good. That means you understand the stakes. The War Corps' glow flared brighter, spilling through every seam in the ship like molten light. The Scath fired. This time, the beam didn't bend. It vanished. The space between the two ships warped, twisted, and then shattered like glass. A silent ripple expanded outward, and pieces of the Scath beam scattered like sparks in water. For the first time, Rafe saw fear on Vakor's face. What did it just do? Rafe asked. The Vakari's voice was low. It tore a hole in space, and now it's pulling us through. The view outside twisted, the stars dragging like paint across wet canvas. Somewhere behind them, the Scath screamed warnings across comms. But they were already gone. Rafe hit the deck hard. The Cinderhawk's artificial gravity was gone again, but this time the ship wasn't just adrift. It was falling. Not through air, through nothing. Outside the cockpit windows, there were no stars, no light, no up or down. Just an endless black ocean that swallowed every photon. Vakor staggered to the controls, his claws scraping against the glassy console. We're inside the War Corps' jump stream. It doesn't take you somewhere. It takes you to a place where somewhere doesn't matter. Rafe pulled himself upright. We need to get out before... He stopped. Something was moving in the dark. At first, it was just a ripple in the blackness. Then a shape emerged. No, unfolded, from the void. Vast, segmented limbs, jointed, in ways that made Rafe's stomach turn. Eyes like molten planets blinked into existence one by one. The War Corps' voice slithered into his skull again. Feed me. Give me the Scath. Give me him. Rafe looked at Vakor. The Vakari was still focused. On the console, but his jaw was tight, the spines along his neck bristling. You knew about this thing, Rafe said slowly. You didn't just want to use it against the Scath. You wanted it awake. Vakor didn't deny it. My people built it. Long before your kind left their cradle, it was supposed to be the equalizer, a god in a box. We used it, and it turned on us. Only one of our fleets survived, and that was because we fed it something bigger. Rafe's throat went dry. What's bigger than a fleet? Vakor's eyes locked on him. A planet. The deck lurched violently. The thing outside was pressing against the Cinderhawk's hull, not with claws or weapons, but with gravity itself. The ship's frame groaned, and the lights flickered to blood red. The War Corps' voice was louder now, filling his skull like a tide. Choose, little one, him or you. One walks away. Rafe, Vakor barked. Help me direct it toward the Scath's homeworld. We can dump it there before it devours us. but the comms were still open, and from somewhere in the black, Captain, Varek's voice came through, hoarse, ragged. "Human. It's lying to him. It will take both worlds. Shut it down, and I will let you live." Rafe's mind spun. Two predators, two liars, both promising survival, neither trustworthy. The War Corps pushed harder. His vision blurred, his skin prickled, and it felt like every drop of blood in his body wanted to boil away. He could hear, his own heartbeat slowing under its grip. He saw the images again, burning skies, oceans turned to steam, cities shattering into dust. But this time, the faces in those cities weren't alien. They were human, and Vakor was watching him. Waiting. Rafe took a long, slow breath. "You said only one walks away, right?" Vakor narrowed his eyes. "Yes." Rafe moved before he could think too much about it. He lunged at the console, bypassing Vakor entirely, and jammed both hands into the manual core override. The War Corps screamed inside his head, a sound like stars dying. "What are you doing?" Vakor roared, clawing at his arm. Rafe met his gaze. "Making sure it's not you." He slammed the emergency vent control. The floor panels blew open, and a vortex of impossible light swallowed Vakor whole. One heartbeat he was there, teeth bared, claws raised. The next, he was gone, pulled into the War Corps' heart. The creature outside shuddered, limbs twitching, its molten eyes dimmed. Then, like smoke in wind, it unraveled, and the darkness began to fade. Stars bled back into view. The Cinderhawk was drifting alone in open space. Rafe collapsed into the pilot's chair, chest heaving. He could still feel the echo of the War Corps in his skull, but it was fading, like a dream breaking apart in daylight. For the first time since it started, there was silence. He keyed the comm. "Scath ship, this is Rafe Mercer. Vakor's gone. So's your god in a box. If you want to finish this fight, you'll be fighting me." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Varek's voice came, softer this time. "No, human. Today, you walk away." Rafe stared at the fading stars ahead, the hum of the ship's system slowly stabilizing around him. Alone, but alive. Morale. In the void between monsters, survival means being willing to decide who doesn't see the sunrise, even if it's the one standing beside you.